A slammed door, a daughter's silence, a family finally confronting the truth they've hidden for years. When Aurora stood her ground, it shook more than the house. It shook everything Cody believed he was in charge of. Now secrets are coming out, loyalties are changing, and the cracks can't be ignored. You won't believe how deep this goes. Pull up a chair, it's time to dive in. You might be able to hear it in the quiet, the type that comes not after an argument but after something shatters and can no longer be repaired. It was not the first time words were screamed in that home, and it would not be the final, but this time there was a difference. This time a door slammed, and it did not just rattle the walls, it rocked the ground beneath a family that was already precariously balanced for years. Cody Brown, a once self-assured, camera-ready family head, yelled his daughter's name down a hallway as if she were a stranger. And the girl who once covered from tension, she didn't even blink. She just stood there, quiet, strong, done, and sometimes silence screams more than any words ever could. Hi friends. Welcome back to TLC's next chapter. I'm Mia, and if you've been watching the Brown family for any period of time, then you know how multifaceted, how nuanced, how very human this tale has grown. But today's chapter, this one feels different, because this isn't about polygamy or parenting or reality TV. It's about what happens when the roles we've been acting out for years don't fit anymore, when the people who've stood with us stop standing with us, and when the family we believed would carry us up begins to unravel thread by thread. If you've ever lingered too long in a place out of hope, out of habit, or out of love, you may find bits of yourself in these pages. If you've ever stood by and watched someone you love slip away, not in an instant, but gradually, over time, you'll know what these women are going through. It's not about blame, it's about accounting. It's about a man who once ruled with charm and conviction, now fighting to keep the very world he constructed from falling apart. And it's about the women and children that surround him, not shattering but awakening. Aurora's silence in that confrontation wasn't simply one of rebellion. It was about clarity, about understanding that respect is not given, it's taken. And if it cannot be reciprocated, sometimes the only thing left to do is to walk away. Robyn, who had always been the dutiful wife in the midst of the tempest, stood there at that moment numb, torn between the man she'd been standing up for and the daughter she no longer recognized, not due to Aurora having changed, but because she finally had room to be herself. And Cody. He didn't come along, he didn't call. He sat with his pride, believing that remaining silent would somehow bring things back in line. But what happens when silence becomes louder than love? What happens when the version of family you've been clinging to no longer exists? And maybe never really did. Behind the scenes, it's not just feelings that are unraveling, it's money too. Overdue bills stuffed in drawers, TLC checks stretched to the limit, a mortgage that's unpaid. Robyn's been attempting to keep it all together, but the cracks are beginning to appear. And the burden is becoming increasingly difficult to bear. Still, while one half of the family is fighting to keep up appearances, something else is taking its place. A slow transformation, a different sort of strength. Aurora isn't lost, she's healing, finding peace in the unlikeliest of places, rallying on individuals who don't criticize, don't scream, don't insist, simply listen. And for the first time in a very long time, she smiles. And perhaps, just perhaps, the greatest act of rebellion isn't loud. It's settling on peace. At the same time, others are discovering their voices as well. Janelle, Christine, even Meri, women who previously clung so tightly to the hope of unity are finally speaking truth, not to destroy, but to get real. What if the most difficult part of leaving isn't leaving, but acknowledging how long you lingered? What if healing doesn't resemble revenge or anger, but freedom? This is not a tale of a perfect family imploding. It's the story of people waking up to the cost of keeping up appearances, the cost of silence, of loyalty, of pushing down your own truth just to make someone else comfortable. And maybe you've been there too, so grab a cup of coffee, settle in, because what we're about to walk through together isn't just another episode of Sister Wives. It's a window into what happens when old patterns break and new paths begin. This one's not about Cody, not anymore. Let's begin. It was one of those kinds of moments you just can't forget. Not something scripted for television. This was real, raw. Cody Brown slammed that door so loudly the walls shook. His voice echoed down the hall as he yelled Aurora's name like she wasn't even a member of his family, like she was some kind of threat. Not a daughter. Not someone he used to profess love for. Just someone who dared to resist. His voice wasn't only loud. It was with a charge of desperation, of rage, like a man coming apart before our very eyes. And Aurora, she didn't even blink. She stood unmoving in silence, and in some way that silence was louder than anything Cody could have ever screamed. Hey friends, this is Mia, and you're watching Sister Wives Daily Scoop. If you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe and share your thoughts below. because what we're diving into today isn't just TV drama. It's the slow motion collapse of a family. This blast didn't just suddenly happen. Cody's meltdown didn't start in that corridor, but it certainly reached a head there. You could see it in his eyes. Fury, bewilderment, perhaps even a glimmer of remorse. Robyn was stunned in position, caught between her husband and her daughter, and Aurora, who once navigated around Cody's temperament, finally spoke up. No yelling, no crying, just firm truth. This has been building up for years. Years of silence. Years of living on eggshells, of keeping the peace. And now, she was done. Robyn trying her best to maintain things from coming apart, but for real, you can see it, she's cracking under the stress. The money's running out, missed mortgage payments, TLC checks aren't stretching like they used to. Cody doesn't even know the half of it. Robyn's been patching bills together, trying to shield him from reality, but it's all coming back to haunt her. And Cody, either he's oblivious to it, or he simply doesn't want to notice. It was the sort of moment where everything appears to happen in slow motion. Cody charged down the hall, face red, eyes frantic. Then bam, the door slammed shut, resonating through the entire house. "Aurora," he shouted, his voice high, near frantic. But this was not the sort of panic born of love or concern. It was the sort of panic that occurred when a man saw control going down the drain. This wasn't about a simple disagreement. This was about Cody losing the authority he believed he'd never have to doubt. Hi all, I'm Mia, and welcome back to Sister Wives Daily Scoop. If you've been keeping up with the brewing tempest in the Brown family, make sure you subscribe and leave your comments below, because I know some of you've been predicting this for a long time. And if you've ever been made to feel invisible or overlooked in your own home, you might just identify with Aurora here. She didn't scream, didn't sob, didn't even flinch. She simply stared at Cody with this serene, unshakable presence that brought him up short. Robyn, generally the peacekeeper in these family breakdowns, was utterly dazed, her face ashen, her gaze zigzagging between them. She recognized this wasn't a bad day. This was a crack in the foundation that couldn't be glued over anymore. Cody, all bluster aside, was completely lost. This wasn't merely his authority being challenged. It was being rejected, and he had no idea what to do about it. Robyn, on the other hand, is treading water. Behind closed doors, she's concealing just how far down their finances have sunk. The bills just keep coming. The house they'd invested everything in. It's a burden, and Cody still thinks they're okay. He doesn't know how hard Robyn's been working in the background just to keep them going, and now she has nowhere to turn. Aurora didn't yell, didn't break down, didn't even retreat. She just stood there, firm and composed. And that moment, that's when things all shifted. Cody demanded obedience, particularly from Robyn's kids, the very ones he said he loved like family. But Aurora is no longer a little girl. She's seen too much, felt too much. And she finally snapped. Cody, however, unraveled. He couldn't grasp her serenity. He couldn't contain himself. His response wasn't safety, seeking. It was possessive. He prowled. He yelled. He waved his arms around, trying to get a rise out of her. But Aurora didn't move. She was finished with the playing games, the guilt trips, the false perception that everything was okay. She'd called it out. Robyn stood immobile, her hands shaking. And for a single moment, you could glimpse the internal struggle. Do I go to my husband or my daughter? She went towards Cody, perhaps out of fear, perhaps routine, but her eyes never wavered from Aurora because she knew in her heart, Aurora wasn't just walking away from the fight. She was walking away from everything, from the turmoil, the domination, the emotional tug of war. And Cody, he didn't even know what he had just lost. Then came the blow that hurt the most. Cody stared at Aurora and barked, "If you can't respect me, don't come back." Robyn's mouth dropped. She wanted to take back the words, pull them back before they hit, but it was too late. Aurora didn't utter a word. She just turned and left through the front door. Robyn's knees almost buckled beneath her at the weight of that moment. That wasn't just a daughter walking out of the house. That was a daughter unplugging, and the sorrow in Robyn's eyes told it all. This was the beginning of the unwinding. After Aurora had gone, the silence in the house wasn't still, it was oppressive. It crept over all things like a mist. Robyn was immovable in the sitting room, as if she could not move, could not think. And Cody, he did not pursue her. He did not call her name once more. He sat shoulders hunched over, with the face of a man who believed the world was owing him a thing or two for existing. But Cody held on to only one thing at that moment, his pride. Days went by, but nothing much changed. The tension never broke. Robyn started pacing in the evenings, her steps quiet but nervous. She couldn't sleep. She'd just lie there, wide-eyed, staring up at the ceiling as Cody, now sleeping on the couch, snored like none of it concerned him. He said he needed space, that he was thinking, but everyone knew what was actually going on. He was hiding, dodging, fleeing from the guilt, from the destruction, from the reality of what had occurred. The same man who had once insisted on loyalty from all now couldn't even meet his own family's gaze. The bills were mounting quietly but incessantly. Robyn hid them in drawers, stuffed them under couch cushions, doing whatever she could to maintain the illusion. This picture of a family, of stability. But it was slipping from her grasp, and Cody, he was colder by the day. He wasn't attempting to mend anything. But his pride had been wounded, and rather than confronting it, he simply continued to pull away. At the same time, something unexpected was occurring on the other end of the tale. Aurora wasn't crumbling. She was gaining ground. She had gotten together with Micah, her cousin from Christine's side of the family. He wasn't upset. He didn't chastise or demand. He just listened. And when Aurora finally began to open up, you could practically see the burden falling away from her shoulders. For once, she wasn't being judged. She wasn't being stifled. Micah was reminding her that defending herself wasn't rude, it was vital. It was self-preservation, and that type of support, that calm, unwavering encouragement, that was everything Cody had never provided. Robyn came across pictures of that gathering online. Their Aurora, smiling, actually smiling. The type of smile Robyn hadn't seen in months. That's when it struck her. She no longer recognized her own daughter, not because Aurora had changed, because she was finally becoming herself. Robyn had worked so long protecting Cody's reality that she hadn't realized her daughter slipping away, and now she wasn't certain if she'd ever restore that bond. Robyn's moment of breaking didn't come with doors slamming or screams. It came in a soft, exposed moment, the kind of meltdown you try to conceal even when there are cameras on. It happened during a sit-down interview with the TLC producers. Her hands trembled. Her voice was so low it was barely there, and then she said it. "We're broke. This wasn't for ratings. This wasn't part of a dramatic storyline. This was real." Robyn finally peeled back the curtain. She confessed Cody hadn't made the mortgage payment in months, that she had paid for groceries, utilities, credit cards, everything on what little remained in her name. It wasn't about saving face anymore. It was about living. Robyn had attempted time and again to get Cody to sit down and examine their finances. She pleaded with him to review the numbers, to get a sense of what they were actually facing, but Cody rebuffed her every time. He was too proud, too consumed by his own self-righteous indignation to care about things like bills and overdue notices. In front of the camera, he even laughed when questioned about money, brushing it away as if it was no big deal. Told it was in control, but in private, quietly disintegrating. Robyn eventually confessed she hadn't been only lying to the public, she'd been lying to herself. She'd continued expecting the man she'd married to return, the one who vowed to defend her, to lead with strength and with love. Instead, Cody had become obsessed with proving everyone else was the problem: Aurora, the other wives, the children, not him. And lastly, on that old couch with the camera still filming, Robyn spoke the truth. She hadn't been hiding secrets for the family. She'd been lying for Cody. He covered for his own financial irresponsibility, for his intractable pride, for his refusal to face reality. And the weeping that followed, those tears weren't for herself. Those were tears for all that she'd enabled, for the quiet she'd assisted in keeping, for the daughter who had followed through on it all sooner than she had. Aurora, the one Cody screamed at, the one he shoved out the door, had been the only person that was gutsy enough to utter what Robyn was too scared to admit. Cody wasn't looking out for anyone. He was backing away, inch by inch, withdrawal by emotional withdrawal. And soon enough whispers began to circulate. Aurora and Micah had also been seen together at a community event. A quiet, sweet moment until the pictures came up on the internet. Aurora grinned. Micah appeared calm, steady, grown up. Everyone began to notice the contrast. The serenity on Aurora's face, the poise Micah held, and it wasn't even about them anymore. The town started gossiping about Cody, about the man who had stood before the cameras calling out for unity and fatherhood, now disintegrating as his daughter basked in peace far beyond him. It all culminated when Cody learned whose father Micah was, a longtime polygamy critic, a man who had never been quiet about the emotional harm the lifestyle could inflict. To Cody, this wasn't just Aurora with someone new. This was betrayal, and out defiance to his very sense of self. He snapped at Robyn, telling Aurora she was manipulated, used for one reason, to make him appear bad. He couldn't force himself to think that she might have found something that made her feel safe at last. Then, everything shifted. Gabriel entered. Fans had waited for this. Gabriel, who had remained largely alone since the horrifying loss of his brother Garrison, now spoke up. He didn't yell, he didn't accusatory. He merely stood his ground and gazed into his father's eyes and asked one question. "Do you even see what you've done?" It was a still bombshell. He spoke of Aurora, how she had always attempted to mend fences, always attempted to make amends, and how she finally snapped, because even the peacemaker has a breaking point. And he said something about Garrison, something about how Cody's silence, his coldness, left wounds no one could heal. Cody attempted to squirm out of it, as he usually does. Blamed the kids, blamed the kids, blamed the wives, even suggested that cameras exacerbated the situation. But Gabriel didn't flinch. This was the moment when Cody lost control of his narrative. That entire story he'd been holding on to, the misunderstood patriarch rejected by ungrateful wives and unruly children, collapsed right there in front of him. The truth had caught up. His children weren't in the dark. They weren't faking it anymore. They weren't trying to keep it all together for appearances. They were wide-eyed and finished with pretending. And then the voices Cody could no longer quiet. Janelle, Christine, Meri, for years, these women were the backbone of Cody's called plural kingdom, solid, faithful, and boundlessly patient. But now, they've moved out of that role. They're not playing along anymore. In recent episodes, we finally get to witness what years of silent anguish, emotional manipulation, and endless gaslighting turn into when the cameras turn off their buffing. Janelle's producers' meeting was direct. Her voice did not quiver. She was not furious, just exhausted. He does not want a family, she stated. He wants control. That line stung like a brick. It was not about missing birthdays or dinners here. It was about a man who had walked out on the bedrock they all established together. Christine, however, appeared to be re-energized. Freed, you could see it in her eyes, yes. The hurt was still there, particularly when she discussed how her children had been marginalized, but there was fire as well. He punished me for speaking up, she told me. No evading, no minimizing, just the plain truth. And for so many women in the living rooms watching in awe, those in particular who've worn similar shoes, that reality resonated deep. This wasn't drama, this was healing. Then there was Meri. Her moment could have been the most shocking of all. For years, Meri was the one who kept hope alive. Even after decades of emotional space, she clung, attempting to believe in the marriage, in the vows. But now she faced Cody in an empty, charged room, and did not blink. You left me years ago, she said, flat, unambiguous. Steady Cody, always ready with something to say, said nothing. That was the moment when Meri took back her strength, not only from him, but from the tale that had so long portrayed her as desperate or lost. She had eyes for him now, and did not look back. Behind the scenes, Janelle and Christine have been having early conversations with Tell-El. They're developing something new, a spin-off focused on rebuilding, healing, and genuine connection. This isn't about polygamy anymore. It's about what comes after control. Real stories, real recovery of Ken, real community. Cody might have taken over the screen for years, but this time, the story isn't his anymore. And then there was that interview that threw everything into a whirlwind. Aurora's People magazine interview shook the fan base. Her words were real, true, and honest. No spin, no image management, just reality. She talked about living with Cody, about the emotional abuse, the mess when it came to money, and having to pretend to be okay in front of cameras at all times. What she said wasn't just courageous, it was freedom. And it allowed others to open up as well. Robyn, on the other hand, eased out without a word. No grand orations, no over-the-top departures. Only a gentle, exhausted farewell that suited the mood of all crumbling around her. She was exhausted, depleted, and she finally confessed to herself that the home she had battled so vigorously to save no longer felt like home. The bills she'd been secretly piling up, they were still adding up, but this time she was no longer acting like she could do it by herself. Robyn's stealthy departure ushered in a new era, a melancholy one. The facade of family harmony, the stage-managed version for TV, was shattered, and the wreckage, there was no way to deny it now. And just when things couldn't possibly go further downhill, Cody got a lawyer's notice. It was from Peden's attorney. No more clues, no more cryptic suggestions. The legal matters fans had only guessed at in previous episodes. Now they were, and unstoppable. Cody's universe, which had been so vast and boisterous, began shutting down rapidly. The pressure, while coming from all angles, legal, financial, emotional, he was alone, embarrassed. The control he had once exerted over his family, over the public persona, over the story itself, lost. Now, all that remained was public scrutiny and a growing storm behind the scenes. His fall from the center of the family empire wasn't just sharp, it was painful. And what's coming next? We're only beginning to see the fallout.